Hello everyone, nubkeks here. Welcome back to Nub Raids, and today, over in the corner, minimized, I'm joined by none other than Eherbad. How are you doing, man?
Good, thank you. Thanks for having me on the channel again. It was good doing the previous collaboration on Arena, and I'm
Yes.
sure we'll get on to another arena-based video shortly, but there's something a bit more pressing and pertinent to discuss first.
Yeah, absolutely. So yeah, we are going to be jumping on and diving once again, in depth into 3v3 arena, tag arena. You guys really liked that previous video, so we're doing another collab on that. But in today's video, first of all, we got to catch up on all the news. I was away on holiday over to Germany for a couple of days, just a little holiday there. And I missed all the news. It all came out while I was gone. Eherbad's already done a video on this, on one of the pieces of news, the big one, the gear ascension. But we just want to quickly go through the different bits of news to kind of catch people up and give quick thoughts from both of us on our sort of initial reactions to it. And then, we could do more in-depth videos in the future. And I'll obviously be shooting you over to Eherbad's video. I'll show you some of what he's done, which is really in-depth. First of all, we got a 10x on right now. Eherbad, brief thoughts about 10x events and this one in particular. What do you think about this?
Well, I mean, the main problem that everyone knows on the 10x is the odds are just too low now. The champion pool is
Yeah.
too large, and they need to be thinking of more creative and interesting ways to engage people in doing summoning events. I, well, for one, space them out a little bit. They're kind of a little bit relentless at the moment, but also tweak those numbers. 10x used to be quite impactful statistically within the game.
Yeah.
It's been around for what, 3 years. 10x existed back then. The champion pool's probably between 2 and 3 times the size that it was then, and we've still got the same coefficient. So it's lost any real widespread appeal, and I think that's probably why they've been throwing so many events at us. Is they're probably seeing a lower participation than they used to on the 10x, and that's
Yeah.
because people don't value them.
Maybe. I actually think one of the things I see that really bothers me is I see people saying, like, I pulled like 500 shards in this ancient 10x, or I pulled 1,000 shards and I didn't get the champion. 10x needs to change. And it's like, guys, what are you doing? Why, this is why it doesn't change, It's like you just bought 500 shards or 1,000. You just spent hundreds on this event and didn't get anything out of it. And it's like that's why they don't change it. It's because people still keep forking out tons of money for these events. It's like, you gotta stop. You gotta stop doing it, and then maybe it could change. But like, I think that's why they're not going to change it, even though it is ridiculous at this point. It's such a bad event. But people just they spend money for it consistently, and yeah, it's a problem. It's not as bad for voids because, like you said, it depends on the size of the pool, and at least the void pool is smaller. But I still think it's a pretty dodgy event even for voids. But for ancient sacreds, it's pretty yikes. Anyway, they're decent champs, but if you're close to Mercy, I feel like that's about it.
Certainly, and if we could track our mercy in game, it would
Yeah,
make it easier.
I know. Like that is really annoying that you can't track your Mercy in game. Yeah. I feel like there must be legislation where they obviously have to share the odds for the actual like shard type and stuff, like loot box legislation, but clearly not for that covers the Mercy system. That stuff that, like, it's in the game, but you have to track it yourself.
Exactly.
All right, so another quick one here. This actually, in terms of odds going up, this actually surprised me in a fairly positive move, I thought, which is, I think this one is still on, but 3x drop chances for Retaliation and Ice Golem's Peak. And then from Monday, so that's actually tomorrow, 3x, my days are still really confused. 3x event for Fire Knight's Castle for Regeneration set. So I thought that's actually kind of interesting. What do you think about this one? Number
I think
one.
it's a really positive change to increase the coefficient on the, additional chance to acquire gear in a dungeon. Retaliation, maybe not the set that I would have liked to have seen. Obviously, Reflex is the one that everyone
Yeah.
cares about. And even Provoke set or Resistance set would have been interesting as a kind of alternative. I feel like Retaliation is so niche that it really doesn't get that much use. But having that additional chance is really actually very good, particularly in Fire Knight if they do that on Savage or Regen. I
Yeah.
could see people really directing a lot of resources because it would be such a good opportunity to get those impactful items.
Yeah. I mean, it is regen tomorrow, so that's actually, I guess, a pretty good one. We are in between fusions, of course. I'm personally expecting somewhere around probably the 14th, so maybe a week and a half or so, something like that for a Christmas fusion. But who knows exactly. So you might have some energy that you're able to spend for the regen stuff. It's so helpful for faction wars, especially getting through that Doom Tower as well. Supports in Hydra. It's a really nice set there too. So that's a good one. Yeah. But yeah, I think it's good. I think it's good that they've changed this. This is positive. Hopefully we see this moving forwards. They've put it up in bold. So yeah, hopefully that's a change for the drop frenzy to encourage people to do it. Yeah, cool.
It also overlaps with CVC,
Oh,
which is
sorry. Yeah.
quite good to consider
course.
that, we can do Fire Knight 25, get the triple drop on regen, and be getting our CVC points. So it's quite a nice little double dip there.
Yes. Well, okay. So actually, I forgot that this was news. What did you think about this one? So all of December Clan v Clan featuring personal rewards. I thought that was. I remember when I was on holiday, the clan Discord, my cluster, they were going absolutely nuts about this one. What do we think about that? So we've got CVC actually this Tuesday, and then 2 weeks after that is going to be personal rewards again. Do you have any strong feelings on this one?
Well, I mean, I think the whole concept of personal rewards is a bit flawed, but I personally think if you have something called personal rewards, it should be just in every single CVC or none.
Yeah.
I think this alternating on a random path, depending on whether they feel like it or not, is creating a lot of people, people are targeting which CVCs to participate in or not. And they're, forward planning and their resource management's all catered around it being on or off. And then the idea that we need a competitive December rather than a relaxing December when everyone wants to be enjoying like the holiday season seems counterintuitive to me. You'd think they'd be like, we'll have no personal reward during December to let you guys have some time off and enjoy real life, rather than say, oh, we're going to make you really work hard during the holiday season for us.
Yeah, pretty much. Yeah, it's like, just think about, Plarium is like, think about all of the money that you're making us for Christmas. Isn't that the real gift to this Christmas season? Yeah. This one is weird. Like the personal rewards, it does. Yeah, I think there's definitely issues around it. I mean, there's the fundamental problem, I guess, where Clan v Clan, there's not a ton of gameplay in terms of it, and there, in a lot of ways it can be just a spend off, so that is definitely unfortunate. I actually quite enjoy the Clan v Clans with personal rewards, in the sense of I enjoy like being in the Discord channel. It's a pity that there isn't more in-game stuff like that, but seeing people work together, figuring out like how many points can we do, what's our strategy, and having that sort of sense of there's the community coming together, I actually do enjoy that. But it's definitely not a consumer friendly way of doing it, for sure. It would be nice, for example, if the personal rewards was just, for example, based on what you actually did rather than needing your clan to win. Because that is, I think, a really unfortunate way of doing it. That's it's just, anyway, there's a lot we could say about Clan v Clan. I think specifically for all of December, yeah, as you said, people are definitely not happy. They want to enjoy December, and it's a pain. I think, and it's awkward because it's like, you could say just don't do it, but of course if you skip a personal reward, Clan v Clan, it punishes you for the next one. You're going to be in a lower tier, so your rewards that you could get are going to be worse. And of course, if your clan is relying on you, if your clan has rules, that can really mess you over too. So pretty unhappy about this one. Yeah, I'd like to see it changed, but that's probably a big discussion for another day. But yeah, it's worth pointing out. People ain't happy. Right. Speaking about people ain't happy, here we go. Hang on. So we got this one. You guys getting to see all the content creator notifications at once here. Look at this. So this was a big one. Artifact Ascension. And Airbad, you actually have... Hey, everyone. Let me give you guys watching like a brief look at this. Really cool stuff that you did going into it and breaking it down. So I'm going to ask if you give us like a quick little summary of what all of this means, and then of course you guys jump over to Airbad's channel because he has an entire video on this. But briefly, what are your thoughts on this Artifact Ascension? Good or bad? What do we think?
I honestly, I think they need to, obviously they're going to have to over time create ways for people to get additional stats.
Yeah.
That's something that exists within any kind of MMO setting, that you do need stat inflation over time. Otherwise, the game just won't last for multiple years. But it
Yeah.
has to be managed really carefully. And I think creating a system that actually adds another layer of RNG on top of what is already a very heavy RNG system,
Yeah.
it's just statistically, from what it looks like to me, is it's basically, on average, it means that 1/3 of your gear is all that's going to still be of the same quality in the new world.
Yeah.
So roughly 2/3 of your existing gear becomes degraded versus this new higher average quality of artifact. And
Yes.
therefore, to get back to where you are now in the new world, you need to spend another 2 times the amount of time that it's taken you up to this point to even get where you are. So if you've been playing for 2 years, you need to play for another 4 years to catch up to where you are now. And it's too much RNG. You need some RNG. We all accept that. We all understand that RNG is important for the longevity of this game. You need some variability on champion acquisition and on stats
Yeah.
and on artifacts, because it keeps things interesting and keeps you having to adapt and come up with different strategies. But if it's too heavily RNG, you get the same situation you had when Hydra was first released, where people didn't enjoy it because it was too much RNG, and they reduced it a little bit and it got better.
Yeah. Yeah.
So my worry here is that I don't think that if they add the mechanic in as it is, it becomes very difficult for them to change it in the future. They can add another material for us to re-roll the Ascension, like a Chaos Oil.
Yes.
And that will reduce the issue a little bit.
Yeah, I'll just jump in. I say that seems almost definite. I remember seeing somewhere that they said you can't currently re-roll this thing, I think. So I think they were definitely hinting it is coming. So stay tuned in your shops and Forge passes soon. You will be able to buy the re-roll.
Exactly. That's the problem. They're creating an issue that they then want to sell you the solution to, rather than creating something that you want to do because it's exciting and interesting and has the ability to upgrade your gear. In fact, what it does is they've created something that's going to downgrade all your existing gear on a relative basis and then sell you the solution to get back to where you are today.
Yeah.
Which to me just seems it's not a good place. And I worry because, I think the new boss itself looks cool. We've got brings sleep into the mix, gives us some new champions to kind of play with. Obviously, Siffi will be overpowered.
Yeah, you can see she's in these sample teams. Let's go to the boss in 1 second. Let's just dive into this first. Just quickly for people that don't, you can't reroll the bonus stat, but I think they were hinting towards it. For people that didn't know, basically you run this dungeon. I'm pretty sure it seems like it's just energy based, so you can run the dungeon as much as you want. You get these oils, and then you can spend the oils to ascend your artifact for bonus stats. I thought that this was really interesting. So this is, I think, the chart that you're sort of referencing in terms of the possible stats, and you were seeing how many were good, and then the possibility that you actually get something good when you awaken your gear, which is pretty miserable. Definitely something that stood out to me from this was like the flat stats. This has been a consistent thing, right? Hell Hades, particularly famous for saying, flat stat in the bin, right? The flat stats, they're coming back. That's what really intrigues me. I'm actually not sure, because I haven't gone onto the test server and properly looked at this stuff yet. I'm not sure if they've improved these relatively, but I think that could actually be interesting. I think it's really bad if the flat stats, same as the main stats on your armor, like a flat stat attack chest piece is, for all intents and purposes, it's effectively useless. Maybe you'll quad roll the speed substat and it's okay, but 99% of the time, more than that, it is an effectively dead piece. It's just junk. That really shouldn't be in the game, and I think you could actually have some interesting stuff happening if the flat stats were actually buffed to a point of being relevant, where you could go like, okay, for Hydra, I can bring in this nuker champion, and the flat HP, because their base HP is really low, is actually a really good benefit compared to the HP percent. Or, let's say on a champion like Brogni, who scales really well with attack, flat attack on Brogni's great because he's got great multipliers but bad base attack. Like, then it could be interesting. But certainly with the main stats on the gear, that's not the case. They're just effectively bad. I'm really worried. Like I said, I haven't checked the exact numbers here, but I'm assuming, perhaps uncharitably, but perhaps fairly, that these flat stats are just dead stats. That they're just not attractive at all. Which again, it's like why is that's just that's not a fun level of RNG at all. Like it's just, oh, I got flat defense on my boots. It's just straight up bad. It's just junk. Instead of being like an interesting trade-off, like, okay, so that's maybe a more niche boot, but there's a specific use for it. So that's something I hope that they would change, because like, I mean, as you can see from these bottom pieces right here, there's so many stats there. And if half of them are just useless, like literally no use ever, it is extremely frustrating RNG, like you said. So yeah, definitely some
And the
concerns.
thing to remember is that this is RNG after you've already found your
Yeah.
best pieces in your account that have taken you a long time to get those, double doubles, those triples, those quads.
Yeah.
And then you're having to roll the dice again.
Yep. It's interesting. I guess in a way of catch up, it sort of filters out, like for players that have been playing and you've got great gear in your account. In a way, it filters out a lot of that gear and says it's not great gear anymore by this new standard. So it's in a way a type of catch up, but it's for newer players. But it's quite a negative. It's not a very fun type of catch up, is it? It's quite a punitive feeling one.
Well, that's the irony. I would say actually introducing 7-star would be more of a catch up.
Yes.
And although it would be initially feel more painful to the player base that suddenly all your gear is in theory redundant, it would actually take you less time to get new 7-star gear of, with the right distribution of roles than it will be for you to get current 6-star gear with the right roles and then with the right Ascension. We're not even talking about the cost of actually doing the Ascension, which is, from what I've seen other people calculate, is actually really, really energy intensive just to even get to the point of doing it.
Yeah, I presume it's going to be a big energy sink to get this stuff. Yeah, 100%. Yeah. Yeah, so there's big question marks for sure. Big question marks. Yeah, we'll see. Yeah, like you said, I mean, just 7-star gear or something would have been cool, or, having new levels of regular dungeons, maybe dropping mythical gear. And I'd be like, oh, now you want to go get your mythic gear from, like, let's say stage 30 of Dragon or something. Like, that would have been a bit better. But I don't know, it's one of those things. It's like stone skin gear. A lot of people don't like it. I can say personally, for me, stone skin gear was a great form of catch up for me. We're going to be talking about Arena very soon, the next video here in the channel. But like for me, stone skin let me kind of get in and actually compete in Arena a lot more than I would have before, where it was like you got to catch up on speed gear to people that have been grinding speed gear for forever. It's like it's just a race that you can't win. Whereas with the stone skin gear, it's like it's a whole new meta, a new playing field. And I can actually go in and keep up a lot more now. So
100%. Yeah. I think you do need those every so often to give a bit of a leveling playing field and to let people that are newer players to have the ability to at least narrow that time sink versus people that have been playing for many years.
Yes.
The problem with mythic gear or the mythical gear that they've got currently is that it's actually an additional RNG role.
Yeah.
So it's not just again, it's like every time they want to give us some more power, they're masking it within RNG. You think of empowerment, you think of awakening, and you think of mythical gear and artifact ascension, and all of them require you to roll the dice.
Yes.
At least with awakening, the benefit is defined.
Yeah.
And that's the problem with the artifact ascension, is the actual benefit is itself RNG. So you've got to grind for ages, invest a load of time and energy and effort to win the lottery on your, say, quad crit rate gloves with crit damage main stat. Say you've got one of them on your account, and then you can go and brick it.
Yep.
with flat HP or something. And unfortunately, I don't have any expectation that they're going to have changed the relative weight of flat stat versus percentage stat.
I agree.
I think they're going to keep that consistent, so it will,
which is
always,
so frustrating.
Unfortunately. And it is, because like you say, there should be times where you're like, actually, I really want that flat attack chest because someone like Brogni, who has a low base attack, should benefit from it. But they've made it so bad that even the people with the lowest base stats still benefit more from the percentage, which makes no sense.
Yeah. Yep. It is what it is. We'll see when it comes in. I mean, I guess for me, I'll say that I'm not entirely opposed. Like, obviously, there's going to be randomness in it for sure. It's just exactly how much randomness is in there. That's bad. I also don't mind it necessarily taking a long time to farm this stuff up. I expect the dungeon could actually be really difficult too. But yeah, we'll see how they implement it. There's a lot of room for concern though, for sure. I encourage you guys to go watch Erbad's video where he actually breaks it down and you can see those stats. But in terms of something interesting for sure, positive perhaps, what do you think of the boss? And do you have any like quick thoughts on what champions might be good? We mentioned Sifi a bit earlier, placing that sleep with her A1.
Yeah, exactly. So it seems from the way the boss works, that basically sleep is mandatory. You won't really be able to do anything if you aren't bringing sleep. And currently, there aren't actually that many champions in the game that do it. And obviously, Sifri is famous for it.
Yeah.
And I can reveal one champion I think might be kind of good for it from a kind of budget perspective, and that's actually Crimson Slayer in the Night Revenant. If you go over to Night Revenant,
is she a rare or?
It is a rare.
A rare.
Down there in the bottom left. So you've got a triple hit A1 with a 50% chance of sleep. So, each hit. So you pretty much, you have to be hitting sleep on one of those. The probability of not hitting a 50% on 3 is very, very, very low.
Yeah.
So 12.5%. Then you also have heal reduction on the A3 and TM control on the A2. So it almost feels like her whole kit works perfectly into this fight.
That's actually really interesting. One thing about this one that's interesting is that it's not a turn meter steal, right? It's going to fill her turn meter equal to the amount the target loses. I wonder if that's actually coded differently towards a steal or what. I don't know. Anyway, I guess it doesn't really matter. But yeah, okay, that's cool. Good tip there. She looks really good, so hold on to her and don't feed her. But I definitely thought it was interesting that sleep seems so crucial. But like you said, there's actually very few champions that bring in the sleep. Or again, one of the things they were mentioning is that like he's got this big attack that absolutely claps you. And I think they were using like Mother Cybele and Skytouch Shaman here with Revive on Death to survive. Like this right here. Actually, hey, that's good timing. Boom. Again, there's very few champions that actually bring Revive on Death in the game as well. So, it's something where I feel like the champion pool of viable champs for this boss might be fairly limited. And probably stay tuned for like fusions and new champions that you can buy from shards coming in the near future, I guess. That will be good for
exactly.
it.
I mean, in most of these instances, right, they release the content, see what people use, and then create new champions that kind of fit the gaps. They did that with Hydra. We had people like Necmo that came out after, who ended up giving us everything we needed
100%.
Because they realized kind of what players we ended up using and what mechanics players ended up needing.
Yes.
And then created champions for it. And I think we will have that. In terms of Revive on Death, there are a couple of like random epics that have it on an AoE basis that never really get much love because we've always said Revive on Death is kind of useless. I know it used to be used back in Clan Boss many years ago with a kind of quite a niche strategy where you just die all the time and come back to life. But someone like Lightsworn or I think it's Crimson Helm, I think is the other one. I think they both have a...
Yeah, she uses it for Bommel, right? Yeah.
Yeah. So I think they both have AoE Revive on Death, if I remember correctly. So there are a few epics that have it, and obviously Skytouch has it as well, and then Cardiel's probably the best of all of them.
Definitely. I wonder, could we see as well the resurgence, not even a resurgence because there was never an initial surgence in the first place, but the days set, 25% chance to put sleep. I wonder if that could feature in. It's pretty expensive to use it though, 4-piece set. What my Plarium attuned brain says is next Forge Pass season, what the next set might be an upgraded version of Days.
Potentially. I think that's the problem though, right? Days is just too low a percent chance, 25%. Even if you have the mastery and you get it to 30%, it's just too low to be consistent or relied upon.
Yeah.
And there are you'd rather just use Crimson Slayer. who, even on weak
Yeah,
affinity, is going to hit it more than that day set is.
very true. Very true. I guess the final point to mention on this one, I realized we actually ended up talking ages. There's so much to discuss. What do you think? What sort of future content do you think is coming? It was something that really stood out to me, and you mentioned it in your video as well. Was that they said that like they're adding in all this power creep effectively because there's going to be new content coming that's going to be significantly harder than anything that has existed before, which I thought was really interesting. Do you have any predictions about where it might go, or any wishes about what sort of new content that might be that we're going to need all of this awakened gear to actually take on?
Well, I can say, firstly, we know they want to do PvP in the first half of next year.
Yeah.
So we are going to get some new PvP content, which might be what they're talking about.
Yeah.
Because obviously, if all the players, all the top players have more powerful gear, then yes, it's going to be harder than anything we've ever had before. So they're not wrong, right?
No, not wrong. Oh, man.
So there is that. Then, they did mention when they released Hydra that they would do additional difficulties and potentially additional heads in the future.
Yeah.
So, we'll almost certainly see Ultra Nightmare Hydra at some point. Who knows what kind of stat requirements we're going to need for that in terms of accuracy and resistance.
I think it's going to be extremely high. I think the best key I've seen, I think, is 800 million damage on Nightmare when you need 36.6 to top it right now. So I really think these higher Hydra difficulties are going to crank it like way up, and it's going to be nuts. So that's definitely something to watch out for. I think that's going to be absolutely crazy. There's also this thing.
The risk there with Hydra, though, if they crank it up in the way that they typically do, which is just massive stat gain.
Yeah.
Is if you don't have a Chrysia, you just completely locked out. Is it just you just can't
I know, right? Yeah. I've said it on the channel before. I'm really not a fan of a Chrysia. Like, she is so much more powerful than every other champ. It's like either they got to add in more champs like a Chrysia. It just doesn't make sense to me, It's like she pretty much the top key I saw, I think, was 2 or 3 Acrisias.
I was going to ask you that 800 million. How many Acrisias is that? 5? It's 5 in a Chris.
It's at least 2. She's really strong with Michinaki as well because of the Hex and the debuffs he brings. I think it was like Cardio. It might have had a Krisk. I'm not sure. Venus does crap. Yeah, I'd have to check what it was, but it is, it's some arrangement of these top champs with 2 to 3 Acrisias. Yeah. But she's so much stronger. She invalidates all the other damage dealers in a big way. It's like you bring in Solus for some of the control, and then it's just enable a Chris. I don't know. So we'll see where they go with that. I'm a bit concerned, but Acrisia is what concerns me about Hydra because she's so ridiculously good. We'll see.
Here's the difficulty they have, right? The champion pool is so skewed towards some champions being that much stronger, which we understand why they do it. Makes them desirable. Ultimately, it's good for longevity of the game because everyone's chasing them, and it also makes them money. So it makes perfect sense that they have that situation. But it does mean balancing content around this champion pool becomes extremely challenging.
Yeah, 100%. 100%. It's interesting. What do you think about this third potential clan boss here, this Great Void guy? Do you think that's something that could come out? I'd say possibly next Christmas, like a year from now. They try to do a big release every December. They did with Hydra or Doom Tower. Do you think that's likely, or do you think that's like another year or more out? What do we think about
it's certainly possible that could be towards the end of next year, but I think they probably end up kicking the can a bit further down the road. At least get the Ultra Nightmare Hydra out first, and at least do whatever it is they want to do on PvP. But where I actually personally think they should have directed their energy on all this new content, and it's something I've said to a few clan members in the past, is more Doom Tower rotations.
Yeah,
and there's actually a way you could implement it without kind of creating too much. Should we say that if you added, say, another 3 Doom Tower rotations, instead of ending up with the whole cycle being every 6 months, which I would say would drag it out too much. What you could do is create Doom Tower rotations 4, 5, and 6 that are significantly harder than rotations 1, 2, and 3.
Yeah.
And then at the beginning of each reset, you give the players the choice. Do you want to do rotation 1 or 4? then 2 or 5, and then 3 or 6.
Ooh,
So that
okay.
way
Yeah.
you have some choice. It's still on a 3-month cycle, and you're choosing to either do, say, the equivalent of normal and hard, or hard and very hard, or hard and nightmare, or whatever you want to call it.
Yeah,
And that way we could
yeah.
get other bosses into the rotation and other gear sets. And
Interesting.
you don't need to therefore kind of give us too many more additional rewards, because we're sacrificing one set of tower rewards for another set of tower rewards that might be a little bit better or have slightly different compositions, with maybe some of the more newer materials falling in the new harder Doom Tower. Give us more ways to farm, Dark Fae and Bommel, because they only exist in one
Yeah,
rotation.
definitely.
And the problem is that all these old sets have become redundant now.
Yeah.
Like, I don't need any more untouchable gear. I don't need any more Guardian gear. I don't need any more Fatal. That was never good in the first place, etc. But so the only gear that I like from Doom Tower now is Lethal and Fortitude. And we only get it once every 3 months.
Once every 3 months, 100% agree. Yeah. Yeah, definitely. I'd like to see like a 4th Doom Tower rotation at the very least. And yeah, definitely they could just add in more difficulties. I think that's a really interesting idea of like choosing. I guess your gold keys are limited, so it would bake it in a certain way. If they added in very hard, you wouldn't have enough gold keys to clear all of normal, hard, and very hard. So I guess that's a way of giving a sense of a choice. They could even add in like very hard and nightmare, like just 2 difficulties at once, and have them be like ridiculously tough, kind of like when Doom Tower first came out. I definitely agree that I would love to see more Doom Towers. In fact, that's actually probably we should touch on, because we do have quality of life stuff coming to Doom Tower, which I think is kind of reassuring, because it's not as far as I'm aware, I don't believe they've updated anything with Doom Tower in months, right? I don't think.
I would say at least a year, probably more.
Yeah, so we have the first set of changes in forever. Doom Tower Secret Room update. It looks like it's not really an update to the secret rooms, but the rewards, where you're just going to start getting forged materials. So you can get, that lovely affinity breaker set that you never use. Maybe that's going to start dropping from secret rooms now. Lucky us.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's quite a lazy solution. They can't keep adding more champions there. We get that, because then the time gating for new players becomes ridiculous. Plus, none of the champions have been any good since really Urost and Rian. Dark Kael was probably the last good one on the Epic side. So, there's so many champions. They just keep adding them, and they're irrelevant.
Yeah, 100%.
It'd be nice if one of them had a sleep on the A1.
There you go. Yeah, I know. I think they should do catch-ups as well. Like, how nice would it be to just go in and say, like, okay, whatever. If you're still on, like, the first 6 like, if you're on the first 3 champions, it's like double fragment drops. Like, that's even very minimal. You could do more. You could do like triple or 5 times fragment drops, 10 times fragment drops to get people through those initial ones quickly. And then, like, okay, like let's say it's 5 time fragments for the first set of 3, then let's say 3 times fragment, just something to catch people up so they can actually get there. It's just, it takes so long to actually get through and collect these now. I think that would be nice, so that people that are just starting the game could actually collect these mostly useless Doom Tower champions a little bit quicker. Even if it is a lazy solution, like you said, you just get forged materials when it's done, but it's at least fun to collect those champions. It'd be cool if there was catch up and stuff.
I think, like you said, though, the big issue there is that the champions aren't impactful.
Yeah.
I don't think you would mind working for, say, 2 or 3 months to get a champion that actually would bring something to the table, would help you, go from normal to hard in Hydra, or would help you beat one of the Doom Tower bosses that you've been struggling with previously. I don't think people mind having to spend a long time to work towards a goal.
Yes.
If that goal actually brings something that's useful.
I agree 100%. Like, you'd happily spend 3 times as long going for a Euros level champion is actually useful than getting like a bunch of champs that they're literally Clan v Clan points you never use.
Exactly. It's just
Yeah.
30,000 points. That's it. That's all it
That's
is.
it. Yeah. We also have the Doom Tower auto climb, which I think is actually pretty cool. So just automatically getting through Doom Tower. It's one of my least favorite things every month now is actually going through and clicking like every single gold key and watching it go. And you have to click next. And then I forget and I come back to the computer half an hour later. I'm like, I forgot to tab across and I'm sitting on floor 71. I haven't gone anywhere. So that's a nice change to bring in too. Yeah, stage select, that's very small. I thought this was funny, the instant upgrade silver counter, so you can feel really sad when you spend absolutely loads of silver.
Yeah, I thought this was a strange one to add because
It is.
I mean, I'd rather not know, honestly.
yeah. Don't tell me. Keep the bad news away. But yeah, that was interesting. So there we go. I mean, I think there is hope for more Doom Tower stuff. I think the reason that they haven't done any more is because it's content that's really, it's not directly monetized. I guess it's indirectly monetized in the sense that you need champions to progress through and blah, blah, blah. But for the most part, like, they don't sell these keys. They tried to, and it didn't work. So they stopped, which was great. But like, this content it's monthly content. It gets people logging in to play, I suppose. But they've clearly struggled to find the champions to put in there. And they just put in filler champions and they don't monetize it. I feel like it's just been on the back burner, which is a pity because I think it's one of the best pieces of content in the game, actually. It's very fun to climb up. Some of the bosses I feel like can be a bit too frustrating, but they're still, generally speaking, fun puzzles to fight the bosses, and the secret rooms are kind of fun puzzles too. Again, some of them I think are too difficult. But yeah, on the whole, it's good content. So yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I'd agree. For me, it's my favorite piece of content in the game. I think it's the most interesting content within the game, other than original clan boss. But it's been around for so long now that we barely really talk about it anymore.
No.
But Doom Tower, I think, was the best implementation. It's funny that you mentioned it. It's the one that maybe they struggled to monetize, and that's ironically
makes it
actually
good.
the best piece of content. It doesn't. You don't have to pay to play Doom Tower, and that's the problem I would say with Empowerment, Awakening, so Iron Twins, and the new Ascension, is they're all so resource heavy to even get into. Like, how many shards are you going to have to pull to get a +4 anything on your account?
Do you actually have any empowered champions? I have none. 0.
I have none. I'm not even anywhere near finishing any of the faction guardians. Like, I have my best faction. I think I have 6 of the 10, but most of them I only have 2 or 4.
Yeah, I've just got up to 8 on barbarians. I think that's my furthest. Yeah, got none in undead. Yeah,
exactly. So with the champion pool as it is, the amount of money that would have to be spent to get empowerment is just absolutely ridiculous. So it's a form of pay to even play. And
it's a whale only thing for the most part, right? A very, very, very late game free to play. Like, you've been playing for probably 2.5, 3 years.
Yeah, 2.5 years now, and nowhere close. I'd say I need to play at least another 2 years just to finish the faction guardians.
And you were like the most min-maxed optimized player I've ever seen. So, like, for you to not be able to do that, like, that means nobody, unless someone's exceptionally lucky / unlucky to get lots of stuff in the same faction, it's just not possible. Yeah, I feel like empowerment was a whale only thing. A couple of quick fire questions before we end this, what has ended up being a podcast, basically. Do you think, we were talking about adding potentially new difficulties and stuff, do you think they would ever add a new difficulty to Demon Lord Clan Boss? You mentioned that was one of your favorite pieces of content. Or would you even want to see a new difficulty?
I'd love to see another tier, but they won't do it for the same reason that I think they've been hesitant doing anything in Doom Tower that you mentioned before. Like, there's no money in it for them.
In fact, losing money because the rewards are so good.
Yeah, they give us good rewards, and they do in Doom Tower as well. You get 2 sacreds, couple of voids, like legendary books. You get really good rewards from Doom Tower.
Yeah.
If you complete it every month, like, the rewards are genuinely very good. So that's the problem with them. What rewards would they have to give you above what they give you in Ultra Nightmare chest already? And are they going to do that? The answer is no. They'd rather add Iron Twins that uses energy. They'd rather add the Ascension stuff, which uses energy. You know, they've moved away. They did Faction Wars and Doom Tower, where they allowed us to play the mechanics for free.
Yeah.
And they've moved on to stuff where to play, you need to spend.
Yeah.
So unfortunately, it's gone from pay to win to pay to play, which is a worry for me.
Yes. Okay. So I've, in terms of my answer to that one, I'd say like I've got sort of mixed feelings. Like you said, I'm not sure in terms of the gameplay, how much more gameplay would there be from a higher level of clan boss like Demon Lord? I'd be interested to see if there'd be any gameplay twists or tweaks, or if it's literally just more stats. I think it could be quite fun though, but I feel like it might be difficult to actually make it interesting rather than just rebranding your teams. And then the final question I wanted to ask is, seeing as we got this new dungeon coming, I think next week, quick question then in terms of, now that the Iron Twins Fortress has been out for a while, like let's say rating out of 10 in terms of the dungeon, let's say how fun it is to actually play the dungeon. Let's leave out the rewards and an awakening as its own can of worms. But in terms of that dungeon boss and progressing through the keys and energy costs, etc., taking that as a sort of a whole, how would you rank Iron Twins?
I think it's been a disappointment overall. Even if you take away the whole awakening system, and we don't even consider that, and even if you take away the energy that it uses, and we don't even factor that in, the actual boss mechanic is a little bit overtuned in the sense that outside of an unkillable team, there's really very few teams you can create that are going to be 100% consistent. Because the way the Enrage works in a relatively RNG uncontrollable fashion means it's very, very, very difficult to actually create a team composition. I tried with the champions I had on my account, and I didn't have an AOX at the time.
Yeah.
And without having the AOX to extend the debuffs, I couldn't come up with one that was 100%. I got to like 95 to 98%, but every now and then it would still fall over. So I just end up giving up and just built a block damage team. I was like, it's not worth it. Because I could find one, but I'm not going to spend 20 energy each time to keep trying to find that team that is perfectly 100%. And it's really hard to stress test it because you can only run it 6 times a day anyway.
Yes, true. I actually don't run an unkillable one. I run this one right here. But it's very similar in terms of how it works. It's like a Geomancer thing. Like that's definitely something I thought was disappointing about the boss, was that we've seen Geomancer dominate bosses before, and this was, I felt like, another dungeon where whether or not you have a Geomancer is one of the biggest markers of success or failure, really. It's just so dominated by him. I thought that was definitely disappointing. And like you said, I felt like the boss is fairly overtuned, in the sense that with a Geomancer, you just use that damage reflected back on himself. But the boss is super duper difficult, and it's difficult to actually answer it. And I thought the Ice Golem-esque mechanic was a bit hit or miss. I think it makes Ice Golem itself quite a frustrating dungeon to run. I think it makes this dungeon a bit frustrating to run as well, like because it's difficult. It's really difficult to control outside of like a Geomancer team with 0 other damage, where it's very controlled. It's very, very difficult to actually have the debuffs up that you need at the right time to stay alive, and it just pushes you towards, like you said, these sort of speeching block damage teams, or Geomancer teams that sort of, it feels kind of like cheesing the boss more than actually beating it legitly. I don't know though.
No, I completely agree, and I think that's the main problem, is it does feel like you're cheesing it. And how many videos or interest have you seen outside of the first 2 weeks in terms of, I found a new kind of epic only composition, or this new champion, I've found one that works with them? No, it's people did it for a bit, a couple of speed teams were published, block damage team or 2 was published, and that's it. Everyone's given up now, because it's basically your most efficient way is just Geomancer and block damage. If you don't have one or both of those, you might as well just not even be bothering trying it, because it's too frustrating.
Yeah, agreed. Yeah, funny that you mention it. I think I did maybe on stream or something, the first day I was trying out some teams going up the levels, And then I jumped onto the test server, tried out some teams. I did a video with the Geomancer team, and I was like, okay, the dungeon's done. I don't have much. And then other people did the block damage stuff. And I was like, nah, okay, I don't really have anything to contribute. So dungeon done. We'll see how the new one goes. Hopefully it's going to be last a bit longer than that. We shall see. Well, I think, like I said, it comes out later this week. Anyway, Airbad, thank you for joining me for what I had intended to make a short little summary of the news. But
it's a 10-minute video, right?
A short 10-minute video. But actually, I felt like there was a lot to say about all this stuff, and it ended up being more of a sort of, podcast thing. But hey, hopefully people enjoy the video. Thank you for joining for the 10 minutes.
Thank you for having me.
10 plus 35 minutes is what it's actually ended up being. My goodness. Right, what we're going to do, maybe we'll take a short break, grab a cup of tea or something, and check back on the channel, guys, because we are going to be diving into some arena breakdown stuff. With Airbad, diving into 3v3, looking at teams on offense, defense, building teams, etc. So more of that advice to get you guys through one of the tough areas of the game, getting towards that Romantus type stuff and pushing beyond. So see you guys for that soon. Thanks for watching. Bye-bye.